All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a real head-scratcher, a mystery that affects, well, all of us. We're talking about the honeybee. So here's the case. Healthy bee colonies go out to do their job pollinating crops, but they come back weak, struggling. So where do we start? Let's look at the first clue.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the scene. You gotta understand, the demand for bees to pollinate our crops is just booming. I mean, since 2011, it has skyrocketed by almost 77%. That's huge. And a lot of that is thanks to crops like blueberries and cranberries. Now, you'd think more work means more success, right? Well, turns out it's not that simple.
And this is where the mystery really kicks in. You've got beekeepers sending out more bees than ever, but the colonies are coming back weaker. It just doesn't add up. It's like a classic whodunit, but instead of a detective novel, the health of our entire food system is hanging in the balance.
So to figure this out, we have to go right to the scene of the crime. And you need to know, commercial pollination, it is not a walk in the park for these bees. It's a super high-stress gig with some pretty unique dangers.
I mean, just try to imagine this. You're packed up, trucked clear across the country, you get exposed to all sorts of new pests and pesticides at every single stop, and then you're supposed to get to work. That's what these bees are up against. And out of all those stresses, one of them started to look like the main culprit, a lack of good nutrition.
Yeah, and this quote from the study really hits the nail on the head. We see a giant field of, say, blueberries, and we think it looks beautiful, right? Lush. But for a bee, it's basically a food desert. See, blueberry pollen is super low in protein, and when that's the only thing to eat for miles, the bees start to get seriously malnourished, fast.
And that brings us right to our prime suspect, a major protein deficiency. You know, just like for you and me, protein is absolutely critical for a bee's health. Take that away, and the whole colony, it just starts to crumble. So bees have this really cool way of storing protein. It's a molecule called vitellogenin. The best way to think about it is like their all-in-one superfood, their personal power pack. It's what fuels their immune system, it's what they use to raise the baby bees, and it's what gets them through the winter. It's everything.
But when that power pack runs out, oh man, it is catastrophic, seriously. The queen stops laying eggs, so the colony's growth just slams to a halt. They get weak, they get vulnerable to all kinds of diseases. And get this, the study says it can take an entire month for a colony to bounce back, even from just a short time without enough protein.
Okay, but here's where the plot thickens. Beekeepers weren't clueless here. They knew protein was an issue. They were already giving their bees protein supplements, but for some reason, it wasn't working. So in 2012, a team of researchers decided they had to figure out why.
Their first hypothesis was pretty simple, you know? They thought, okay, if the bees are protein deficient, maybe we just need to give them more food, a bigger dose of the supplement. So they set up a test using the most popular commercial brand out there to see if quantity was the answer.
So they ran the experiment. They gave some colonies 2 pounds of this stuff, some 3 pounds, and some a whopping 5 pounds. And the results? Absolutely nothing. It's wild. There was no real difference in the bee population or their health, no matter how much food they got. Just piling on more food did squat.
So, total dead end. And now the mystery's even deeper, right? If the quantity of food wasn't the problem, then what on earth was? This completely baffling result sent the researchers right back to the drawing board. It led them to a new study the next year, in 2013, where they tried a completely different angle.
This time, the researchers had a new hunch. They started thinking, okay, maybe it's not about how much food the bees are getting, maybe it's about what's in the food. It was time to shift gears from quantity to quality.
So they put together a new lineup of suspects. Suspect number 1, the same popular brand from the failed 2012 study. Suspect number 2, another commercial brand, one that had been tested by the USDA. And suspect number 3, a simple, homemade recipe that a lot of old-school beekeepers swore by.
All right, so the stage is set, the test is on. One of these had to be the answer, right? Well, when the results from this 2013 trial finally came in, they weren't just a little different, they were absolutely stunning. And I mean, look at this. The verdict was crystal clear. The 2 commercial brands, they did no better than the control group, which got nothing at all. But that homemade patty, wow, it was a runaway success. We're talking a massive boost in the overall bee population. And it's the exact same story when you look at the brood. That's the baby bees, the next generation.
Again, the commercial stuff did zip, but the homemade recipe, a huge increase. That's not just feeding the bees now, that's securing the entire colony's future.
So what was the big secret? Why the huge difference? Well, the smoking gun, the clue that cracked the whole case, came from just watching the bees. They weren't even eating the commercial patties. They were just storing them in the honeycomb for some other time. But the homemade stuff? They were all over it, gobbled it up right away.
And the data confirms it, plain as day. You can see right here how much of that uneaten supplement was just getting stuffed into the combs. The colonies that got the homemade patty stored almost none of it. It's simple. The bees were pretty much rejecting the commercial food, and that's exactly why it wasn't helping them. So, there you have it. Case cracked. This whole investigation pointed to a really simple but really powerful truth. So what's the big takeaway here? What does this teach us about how we can actually support these tiny, essential partners of ours?
Turns out, the solution wasn't some high-tech, super expensive patented formula. Nope. It was a simple, cheap recipe using stuff like brewer's yeast and dried egg. The key wasn't some crazy science. It was just about giving the bees something they actually wanted to eat, something that was actually good for them. Case closed.
And the payoff for getting this right is huge. I mean, when these colonies come back from pollination all strong and healthy, they can then make a honey crop, which is great for the beekeeper. And even better, those healthy colonies can be split to create new colonies. And that helps meet that crazy 77% increase in demand we talked about right at the start.
So at the end of the day, this whole detective story shows us that helping the bees wasn't about throwing more technology or more product at the problem. It was about actually listening to them, understanding what they really needed. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on, doesn't it? In a world full of really complex problems, how often do we completely overlook the simple, effective solution that's been staring us in the face the whole time?